Good evening. Welcome to Inside City Hall for Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. I'm Errol Lewis. Republican mayoral candidate Curtis Sliwa today accused rival Andrew Cuomo of trying to bribe him out of the race, saying that several billionaires aligned with the former governor approached him with offers of cash or a job if he would help clear the field. Cuomo quickly denied the bombshell accusation, while Democratic mayoral nominee Zohran Mamdani seized on Sliwa's accusation to attack Cuomo. Our Bernadette Hogan joins me now with tonight's top story. Good evening, Bernadette.
Good evening, Errol. And Mamdani said that good for Curtis Sliwa for bringing it up and exposing this alleged coordination to try to get Sliwa out of the race. But he also said it's yet another attempt to try to kick him out of the race when he, as he describes, has such a far lead.
What you've done is not only unethical, it's illegal.
Republican mayoral candidate Curtis Sliwa dropping a bombshell.
7 offers so far to give me more money than my father and I ever made in a lifetime of work.
Accusing opponent Andrew Cuomo of convincing some billionaires to dangle cash bribes and job offers to Sliwa in order to get him out of the mayoral contest, as part of a continued effort to gang up on Democratic frontrunner Zohran Mamdani.
You call me from now on. Remember, this is a one-party state, New York. I can tape your conversation. Stop it. End it. Cuomo is behind it. He needs to get out and campaign.
Sliwa told New York One he has no plans to file a formal complaint with the city's campaign finance board. Instead, he issued his own warning.
I don't trust the billionaires. So let me put you all on blast. You call me. You try to bribe me. First of all, it's unethical. It's illegal. I will tape your conversations, I will report it to the proper authorities, and I hope you go to jail.
Cuomo, meanwhile, denied the accusations in a statement through a spokesman, saying Curtis Sliwa is a liar and a fraudster who has admitted to faking crimes for publicity, and last night they actually tried to get us to join in on one of their cheap stunts. This is more of the same. And Mayor Eric Adams also chimed in, saying, while Curtis spins conspiracy theories, I am focused on delivering results for New Yorkers. Not surprisingly, Mamdani sided with the Republican.
Andrew Cuomo, Eric Adams, and Curtis Sliwa, I trust Curtis Sliwa's word the most.
He says the accusations help link Cuomo and Mayor Adams to the White House.
Own decision as to who should lead this city. To have Donald Trump working with his billionaire donors and apparently a number of others to try and influence this race. Let our democracy be something that is determined by the people of this city. And I appreciate Curtis Sliwa, even amidst all of our disagreements, all of the vast separation between our policy proposals, that he is someone who cares more about this city than he does about what these billionaires want him to do.
Meanwhile, ahead of rallying with nurses in the Bronx against upcoming federal health care cuts, Mamdani spoke to former Vice President Kamala Harris on the phone about his affordability agenda for around 10 minutes. His spokesman said Harris, quote, reaffirmed her support for his candidacy. So, of course, Mamdani, Errol, is saying that this isn't going to stop his role. He's ahead in the polls, and his message is continuing to connect to New Yorkers. And he appeared to, when it comes to Cuomo and Adams, say that all these efforts are kind of desperate, as opposed to Curtis Sliwa, who appears to be running a good faith campaign.
We don't know exactly what was said to Curtis Sliwa, but it doesn't seem far-fetched. There were a number of people. We had John Catsimatidis come in the studio, in fact. There were a number of people who are billionaires who have said, we would like this to be a one-on-one race between Andrew Cuomo and Zohran Mamdani.
Right, and I spoke to Sliwa on the phone, actually, outside of that interview that we watched, and he said that he's been getting some calls since at least January, and that the calls have been steady, job offers, other exchanges to get him to get out. He said, however, he has not received any job offers from the White House. He maintains that. But still, the accusation of bribes, money, cash payments, it's definitely an interesting twist.
I don't think he's going to get any more of those phone calls, that's for sure. Thank you, Bernadette. The federal government says that our city will not be eligible to receive millions of dollars of grant funding meant for magnet schools in response to New York policies that allow students to use the restrooms that match their gender identity. New York One education reporter Jillian Jorgensen has the latest in this report.
The Federal Department of Education sent a letter to the city's public school system last week, targeting the city's guidelines to support transgender and gender-expansive students. Those guidelines allow students to use restrooms, locker rooms, or changing rooms, and participate in sports teams that match their gender identity. The letter demanded the city change its policy to separate students in these spaces on the basis of sex, and gave them a deadline of Tuesday at 5 p.m. That deadline came and went, and the federal government says the city will not be eligible to receive the grants next fiscal year. In a statement, a Federal Department of Education spokeswoman said, "These are public schools funded by hardworking American families, and parents have every right to expect an excellent education, not ideological indoctrination masquerading as inclusive policy. If these entities are willing to risk federal funding to continue their illegal activity, that decision falls squarely on them." The city stands to lose $15 million next year and $36 million in total across the span of the grants. A spokeswoman for the city school system said officials were disappointed the federal government would not grant the city an extension to consider its position. If the federal government pulls this funding, that means canceled courses and shrinking enrichment. That's a consequence our city can't afford and our students don't deserve. The move comes as Mayor Adams has said he does not believe children of different sexes should share facilities, but has acknowledged that issue is a matter of state law, which he cannot change himself.
We're going to always respect how one identifies themselves. But my utmost importance is to ensure that when my children are in school, they're in there in a safe environment. And I do not believe a safe environment is allowing boys and girls to use the same facility at the same time.
Speaking a day later, the school's chancellor also acknowledged school policies were in accordance with state law, but struck a much different tone than the mayor, saying the existing policy was in accordance with the city's values.
When it comes to creating safe spaces for our young people, we want to make sure that every single student, regardless of background, regardless of immigration status, regardless of gender identity, that they're not only welcome, but that they feel supported and valued in our system. And so to date, those policies remain in place, and we're going to continue to uphold them as part of our values here in New York City Public Schools.
Jillian Jorgensen, New York 1.
It is time for a break. Coming up, 2 more casino proposals, one in Queens and one in Yonkers, are up for committee votes tomorrow. We'll bring you a preview next. Later on tonight, I'll be joined by the chair of the New York City Housing Authority Board, Jamie Rubin, to talk about how the next mayor can build more affordable housing around the 5 boroughs. Stay with us.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One, weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
It's only a game. It's only a little rivalry. It's only a ritual.
When I come home late,
and a few generations.
you're always there.
And only Spectrum TV includes all your favorite streaming apps with live TV at no extra cost. It's only a game. It's only everything.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning. You've done at the sports section.
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s.
but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where we are continuing to follow the highly competitive casino licensing process. Only 5 proposals remain active as bidders. They are all competing for 3 citywide licenses. 2 more votes are set for tomorrow, including the MGM Empire City proposal up in Yonkers and the Resorts World proposal in Queens. Our Courtney Gross has been following this whole process for months now, and she joins us with the latest. Good evening, Courtney.
Errol, not months. It's been years, actually, when we first started covering this casino process of trying to get these 3 downstate casino licenses, which would allow them to operate full-fledged casinos in and around the 5 boroughs. There were at least 12 applicants. Well, that has whittled down very slowly, and now there are only 5 left in contention, and that, of course, includes the 2 casinos that currently operate slot machines in this tri-state area, and that, of course, is Empire City MGM, which operates in Yonkers, as well as Resorts World, which operates in Queens, and they're heading to their Community Advisory Committee vote, the final vote tomorrow. And in order to continue on to the next phase in this licensing competition, they will have to get those committees' approval. My sources are telling me that they are slated to potentially be unanimously approved tomorrow. And this, of course, would be the first 2 applicants to actually get to the next phase of the process. We know, of course, just last week and in the beginning of this week, the Manhattan projects that were up for this vote, the Avenir on the west side of Manhattan, Freedom Plaza on the east side, and of course the Caesars Palace proposal in Times Square were all rejected by these community advisory committees. So now we'll have to see if ones actually get through this process. Earlier this week, we did get in touch with Governor Kathy Hochul, which helped orchestrate this process, and we wanted to know whether or not she was pleased with how it's going.
It's in our interest to have the most number of proposals come forward because that gives us more opportunity to negotiate and to leverage that. So that's in our interest to have more proposals come forward. But certainly I've been committed to community input from the beginning. And the communities have spoken. These are their neighborhoods. It's their livelihoods, where they raise their kids, and their voices have been heard. So the process continues.
And communities have certainly had their input on this process. There will be more votes coming up next week. That, of course, will be related to the Coney Island project, the Bally's project in the Bronx and Metropolitan Park, which is also in Queens and has been proposed by Steve Cohen. And my sources are telling me, Errol, that the Steve Cohen project and potentially even the Bally's project could get approval at these local committees. But as of now, it does not look like the Coney, the proposal in Brooklyn, will get this approval. In fact, they've even acknowledged that, and this morning they issued a press release saying that they were going to increase this community trust they were giving to the community, which would allow them to spend $300 million, the community, on whatever projects they decided they wanted to spend money on. They increased that to the $300 sum from $200 million, obviously trying to convince the members of this local community advisory committee to change their minds.
Community input might be a misnomer in this case. I mean, in effect, the local council members, state representatives, and the borough president were given effective veto power over the projects that have failed so far.
Absolutely. This is how this project was designed. This process was designed via state legislation, saying that the local community members, in the form of the local representatives here in New York City, it's going to include, those committees are going to include your council member, borough president, state assembly person, state senator, the mayor, and the governor. They have to approve these projects. They need to have 4 votes for these projects to move forward. They say it was designed this way because they wanted to make sure that the community had buy-in. They wanted to welcome these casinos to their neighborhoods, because obviously having a casino in your backyard for some people may not be a welcome addition.
Right. And in a lot of cases, we saw the proposals. It's not like they spent a weekend and just threw together a proposal. I mean, some of them spent millions and millions of dollars.
A lot of money. Millions is an understatement. This has been going on. If you look back to the lobbying records, people have been, acquiring lobbyists, hiring people to work on these proposals going back to 2000. We know that the voters decided that they wanted to welcome casinos in New York State, including upstate and downstate here in the 5 boroughs many years ago. And it has been a decades-long process, first starting upstate and now down here in the 5 boroughs to actually get these built. It's interesting, like I said at the beginning of the segment, that we had a dozen proposals. There was one on Long Island, the Sands in Nassau County, that initially I thought was going to be a big hit and a favorite, and that didn't even get to this part of the approval process. There are 3 licenses up for grabs, and we'll see what ends up getting to the actual state board that will make the decision.
Okay, and in theory, the number could be 0, right?
Technically, it is up to 3 licenses that they can issue, so who knows if 3 will actually be issued.
Okay, thanks very much, Courtney. In other news, a family in New York City is weighing whether to join the military to try and stop a deportation case against their parents. It's one of many cases that New York One has heard about that immigration lawyers say they are scratching their heads over. They're wondering why cases, sometimes decades old, are now being prioritized by the Trump administration. Our Eric Feldman has that story.
Chen finds himself sitting in his immigration lawyer's office again. It's been about a decade since he was last here with his wife. He says he was so nervous about being picked up by immigration authorities, he only wanted us to use his last name. The sushi chef has been in the United States more than 30 years now, coming from China illegally. He says he came for freedom. And it was about 10 years ago, Chen's deportation case was administratively closed. That's where immigration cases are effectively dormant, while the undocumented person pursues a path toward status. For Chen, that was a green card. But a few weeks ago, the U.S. government sent a letter to Chen that it was reactivating his case.
I've been doing immigration law for 35 years. I have never seen this before. This makes no sense at all.
Ed Kucha is Chen's lawyer. Here's why he says he's confused by the government going after his client. Chen has 2 children who are U.S. citizens and now adults, along with his wife, who has a green card. Kucha says it makes Chen eligible for a green card as well. But in his case, he has to get a waiver first. To do that, it means filing a lot of paperwork. Kucha says Chen was in the process of doing that and submitting everything. But now, all of that is ground to a stop. Why? His case is no longer administratively closed because the government is trying to put his deportation case back onto the docket. So not only does this decision stop any chance of Chen pursuing a green card, Kucha argues it will likely be years before Chen has a hearing in deportation proceedings, and by then, Chen could have already gotten his green card.
And this is for most of these people, they're just wasting time.
Kucha says he's received dozens of these cases this year alone. He admits a couple of his clients deserve this for moving too slowly, but he says not most.
Messing up the court system for no particularly good reason.
There isn't a way to track how many cases are being recalendared across the country, but several lawyers New York One has consulted with are getting them too. Some shared they believe immigration judges will disagree with the government's requests, but still, that is precious time being taken from these judges.
Which is inadequate to handle the current docket plus the old stuff.
Immigration lawyer Michael Wild says he represents a married couple in Queens with 6 children. His clients are a retired bus driver and housekeeper who recently had their cases reopened. Wild says he explained to the couple's 6 U.S. citizen children the best course of action could be one of them to join the military.
Where they create and impute a legal entry for both parents based on the service of the child. So you can imagine the call to action of a lawyer telling one of 6 young people on a screen that they have to join the U.S. military to help their parents.
A spokeswoman for the Department of Homeland Security says the administration is following and fighting for the rule of law. In a statement, she says the Biden administration chose to release millions of illegal aliens, including criminals, into the country and use prosecutorial discretion to indefinitely delay their cases and allow them to illegally remain in the United States. The average illegal alien gets far more due process than most Americans. The fact of the matter is those who are in our country illegally have a choice. They can leave the country voluntarily or be arrested and deported. And in Chinatown, Chen is meeting with his lawyer, Ed Kucha. His hearing set for this spring, but he fears every day could be the day he ends up detained. Eric Feldman, New York One.
It is time for a break. Coming up, President Trump has changed his mind about the Ukraine-Russia war again. We'll bring you those details in 2 minutes. Stay with us. This election year is all about New York City. There are 51 council seats up for grabs, races for our next city comptroller and the next public advocate.
Plus, an unprecedented race for mayor. That puts the power in your hands to decide who will run our city.
Our team of political experts will be covering every angle of this election to keep you informed on how it could affect you, so you can feel confident with your decision at the polls.
Stay with Spectrum News New York 1 for Decision 2025, exclusively on Spectrum.
Spectrum TV, isn't that only live TV?
No, it's only all my favorite streaming apps with live TV.
Okay.
It's only all included at no extra cost, and that's the magic of math. Will this be on the test? Sure, why not?
It's only one simple payment for all our TV. We gotta simplify and win. Winning is equally important.
If not, more so.
Yeah!
Only Spectrum TV, fixed TV.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time. And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard.
At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan. Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York 1 to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood. Because our city never stops moving.
3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories. But first, stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a warning during his address to the United Nations General Assembly, saying that if powerful nations do not help Ukraine fight against Russia now, the war will only expand. His comments came one day after President Donald Trump reversed course and is now saying that Ukraine has a chance to win back territory that it held before the war. Spectrum News national political reporter Daniel Grimes has the details.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told world leaders on Wednesday that Russia's efforts to expand its territory will not end with Ukraine. He said countries have a choice to fight now or face a bigger threat in the future.
Stopping Russia now is cheaper than wondering who will be the first to create a simple drone carrying a nuclear warhead.
Zelensky pointed to several examples of Russia encroaching on other countries, including fighter jets that entered Estonian airspace last week and drones launched into Poland earlier this month. Russia did not take responsibility for either action.
International law doesn't work fully unless you have powerful friends who are truly willing to stand up for it. And even that doesn't work without weapons.
The speech came just one day after President Donald Trump met with Zelensky and wrote in a Truth Social post shortly after, quote, that Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. It's a stark contrast from his earlier comments, where President Trump indicated land swaps would be necessary to end the conflict. Russian President Vladimir Putin's spokesman says President Trump is mistaken that Ukraine can win the war. The U.S. also plans to keep sending weapons to help Ukraine, but the administration is pushing for Europe to reduce its reliance on Russian oil.
A lot of countries, through their purchases of Russian oil, are funding a lot of this. The president's been very clear he wants the carnage to end.
On Friday, the European Union announced a new round of sanctions that includes plans to phase out Russian liquefied natural gas purchases before 2027, a year earlier than initially planned. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Wednesday. Now, Tuesday, Rubio told the United Nations very generous offers have been made to end Russia's war in Ukraine, but tensions have instead escalated. In Washington, Daniel Grimes, Spectrum News.
It is time for a break now. When we come back, we'll turn back to the race for mayor and what the next administration should do to improve the state of housing. I'll talk about that with Jamie Rubin of the New York City Housing Authority Board. That's right after this break. Stay with us.
My time at New York One has shown me that in the city that never sleeps, the news never stops. So as the day winds down, turn to the rush hour.
Good afternoon, I'm Monica Burke.
To catch up on the stories that matter across the 5 boroughs, with in-depth interviews from the city's newsmakers, plus the latest forecast. Catching you up with today, preparing you for tomorrow. Right here on the Rush Hour. Weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m.
There's an international travel plan with Spectrum that was an additional $10 a month, as opposed to paying a ridiculous amount per day for roaming fees. This literally felt like my old phone carrier was reaching their hand into my wallet and just helping themselves to some of my cash. I like having no surprises when it comes to my cell phone bill. And with Spectrum, that's been the case. So it saved me a ton of money.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
I'm Chris Jakovic. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakovic, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. A new report by Vital City details the ways that our city is failing to produce new housing and talks about ways that we can improve things. The series includes articles on how the housing success story of Co-op City came about, the role that design plays in housing supply, and what we can learn from other cities like Jersey City and even Tokyo. One article examines how the next administration can ensure more housing gets produced while also addressing affordability. And it's the author of that article, Jamie Rubin, who's here now to talk through a lot of this. He helped edit all of the other articles, and he, of course, is the chair of the New York City Housing Authority Board, as well as the chief investment officer of Aligned Climate Capital, an investment firm of clean energy companies. Thank you so much for being here. Good to see you.
Thanks, Errol. Nice to see you again.
Absolutely. I'm tempted to dive into some NYCHA stuff, but we've got so much more to talk about. I want to show folks, put up the graphic of housing production in New York City, because I think this kind of lays the table for where things are.
Yep.
In the 1920s, 100 years ago, 730,000 new homes were added, which is nearly 4 times what we've done in the last decade or so. And as recently as the 1960s, we were doing twice as many as we're doing now. Now, in your article, you point out that when the candidates are sort of, pledging this number of units and that number of units, they're kind of missing the point.
I think they're missing the point in the sense, they're not missing the point obviously in the overall number. We need a lot more housing than we have now. Some would say 500 to 1 million new units in the next, let's say, 10 years. So in that sense, they're right. Where I think they miss things, and where past mayors and past housing officials in those past mayoral administrations have missed things, is by focusing people on those units as if those are the sole way they should be measured, and working within a system that can't possibly succeed under those terms, because everything takes too long.
Right.
When you come in as mayor your first day, if you say you're going to create 10,000 new units of housing, it may take you 10 years to do that. So telling people that you've done it at the end of the first year it simply can't be accurate.
Right. Well, a lot of the politicians I've noticed, they say that we have plans to, that we're going to create or maintain or plan, 1 million units, right? I mean, okay, fine, we're planning to do a lot of stuff.
When I worked for Governor Cuomo as housing commissioner, we had a plan that would create 200,000 units over 10 years. And I knew when I did it that it really wasn't perhaps as clear as it ought to be.
There was a great discussion of why it's so expensive to build in New York. One thing that stood out for me, project approvals take 30 days in Houston, 15 months in San Francisco, in New York City, 2.5 years.
Yep.
I mean, that alone will slow everything down.
Time is money.
Yeah.
That's all you could say. Time is money.
And why is it? I mean, there's a lot of little things, but from your point of view, what's the big thing we could do to get things moving?
Well, I'll tell you a couple things. What I said in my article, and my article was not intended to be a specific agenda for one candidate or another candidate, because in many cases the details are going to be up to the candidate, whoever it is that becomes the mayor. The point that I was trying to make was step back, and we need to understand how the next mayor is going to make decisions on housing writ large. A mayor is a decision maker. Mayor Bloomberg was a great decision maker. Others have been perhaps less good decision makers. They make a few decisions every day, and everything else is execution. I want to know how that mayor is going to think about the housing policy that he or she, here in this case, executes. So that was intended to, that was sort of the point of that article. In terms of the details of why we have such a problem, you know, that we ended up covering more than anything else in this issue. We ended up getting articles from people unsolicited in some cases about the Charter Review Commission's housing questions that they're putting forward also on the November ballot. I know you've talked to other people about that. It sort of took over the process in some ways and it sort of blotted out the sun because it's just so obviously needed as the best way we have in front of us right now to speed up the process that you talked about.
Yeah, I mean, we have in effect veto power that individual city council members have over different projects, and they can kill very big, very important projects, or they can slow them down to the point where the cost just kind of becomes too great to bear and developers just walk away.
It's worse than that in many ways, Errol. The killing of projects, or really the scaling down of projects, is a major problem, obviously, because that by itself wraps you up in it costs money in cases that nobody can afford them, and it costs us housing units even if they get developed. The worst problem is the one we never see, and that's the number of projects that die before they get anywhere near that process. We don't know. You can't prove a negative. We have no idea which projects they are, but they're often going to be projects put forward or developed by people, you know, smaller developers, women, people of color, who don't have the resources to stick it out for that 2.5-year period. They get scared off by this process and they'll go do something else or nothing at all.
It sounds like we have in some ways, a decision-making and democracy problem, not just a housing problem.
Like so much else in the city and in the country, we have a serious democracy problem. But this one, unlike many others, I think is fixable.
Well, yeah, well, because how do we do that? I mean, you lay out some principles that seem to make a lot of sense, although you and I both know that you go to any given individual neighborhood, and there will be, you know, 100, 200, 300 people who are going to say no to whatever is coming down the road. And if they're diligent and they're creative, and many of them are,
very creative,
my friends, they can grind the process to a halt.
They can. The mayor's going to have to stand up, no matter what happens with the Charter Commission, with the questions. The mayor is going to have to stand up because this is going to be the single thing, along with public safety, I think, that's going to determine the success or failure of his administration. The mayor is going to have to stand up and declare that this is the problem he's going to solve, and he is not going to make everybody happy with his solutions. And that is, a lot of that is this neighborhood issue. And other things, you know, other decisions he make will sort of fall out of that, and his whole government is going to be focused on that. I talked some about that in this article. But the solution that we have in front of us that luckily the voters can actually exercise their democratic right to vote and decide this November are the 6 and really the 4 housing questions on the ballot that our wonderful Charter Review Commission developed through a long process of taking public comment and using expert opinion and coming out with an excellent report.
And I guess one way to put it on these questions, or 3 of the 6 or whatever, 4 of the 6, is that it would not give the last word to the local council member. There would be situations in which they could be overridden or even bypassed on certain projects.
That's the ballot question. I think it's question number 4 that's gotten the most attention because it does seem, not really, but it does seem most directly to change the outcome of that particular kind of process, the ULURP process, when it does get all the way through the council. But in some ways, the more interesting and perhaps impactful questions concern that change the process before it gets to ULURP. ULURP is, as you've said, ULURP is this kind of bizarre Byzantine process nobody understands that basically means everything goes through the council and the council signs off. But there are now going to be different processes for different kinds of projects, including, very importantly, a separate process fast-tracking approvals, and before that gets to city council, in the 12 council districts that have created the least housing on a per-person basis over the last number of years, and that they'll be decided after some analysis.
You suggest something that would be yet another big fight, demanding that landlords that have vacant rent-stabilized units, fill those on a pretty aggressive timetable with serious consequences if they fail to do so.
Well, so let me be clear, and this is interesting because it does, you know, if I can turn to politics for 1 second, I also said this in the article, probably the salient salient thing that any mayoral candidate said about housing was freeze the rent, which was Zohran Mamdani. Nothing else really came forward, despite a lot of words. What he was talking about in that proposal was, and this didn't get, nobody focused on the details, but what he was really saying was all rent-stabilized units, so not all apartments, are going to have their rent frozen by the Rent Guidelines Board. Okay. What does that actually mean? It means that some number of units are not going to be able to raise their rent on a year-over-year basis, and that's going to impact some landlords, not all of them, with those apartments negatively. Not many of them are actually hold apartments that are mixed income, and most of the building is fine, and so it won't matter to them. The problem that we face with the rent-stabilized portfolio right now, it has nothing to do with Zohran Mamdani because he's not mayor, is that many of those apartments for the last several years have been underinvested severely, and they are, in some cases, uninhabitable or unrentable at certain rent levels. It's cheaper for the landlord not to rent them out. And the result of that is we have 50 to 100,000 vacant apartments in the city, which is criminal. I don't want to force landlords to rent anything. What I do want to do is have the city, and I think the next mayor's got to turn to this, but fast, look at that portfolio and figure out how to work those apartments out with the landlords, sometimes happily with them and sometimes, frankly, not happily with them.
Sure.
But get them back up above water and get them rented out.
Okay. I mean, one of the great articles in there, I recommend everybody take a look at this, went through dollar for dollar a couple of buildings, and the one in Washington Heights really caught my eye. They're losing $400,000+ a year on stabilized units, and there's kind of no way out of it.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting problem because, and it sort of tests how you feel about it sort of tests your outlook on the world in some cases, because look, these are landlords who in many cases have owned these apartments for decades and made tons of money on them. It was a great investment to have a rent-stabilized apartment in your life. The last few years have been tougher for a variety of reasons, including a change in the law. And it has been much harder on those landlords. Your level of sympathy for them a little bit depends on how you feel about the business of being a landlord. And some of them are absolutely struggling, and that's a problem. Some of them probably are struggling because of underinvesting along the way when they really should have been putting more money into those buildings.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, a lot of food for thought. Thanks so much for coming by. Great
Errol,
talking
thank
with
you.
Okay, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion about the race for mayor with my politics battle. Stay with us.
After 30 years of forecasting for New York, I've learned it takes a dedicated team to cover all the weather our city has to offer.
I'm so honored to be a meteorologist here at New York One because as a Brooklyn kid, this is the station that I grew up watching. Morning, noon, or night, our team is here to bring you accurate forecasts you can count on, from severe weather updates to our weather on the ones. Watch the New York One weather experts on your TV and on the go with the Spectrum News app.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything. Movies, series, sports, reality, news.
Here's a look at today's top stories.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
And even more of your favorites with live TV. Stream across your devices and enjoy anywhere.
See you later.
Get it all with Spectrum TV.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable. The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. After many months and millions of dollars spent on the campaign trail, the candidates really turn into local celebrities in a lot of ways. That is true whenever the mayor shows up, for sure. I saw it up close with Andrew Cuomo when he was getting a slice of pizza out in Hollis, Queens. And that was the scene on Steinway Avenue when I got a cup of tea with Zohran Mamdani earlier this week.
Thank you so much. Lovely to meet you. Thank you. How you doing, brother?
Hey, what's happening?
How are you?
Good, man. Good to see you.
Which is like a 30%.
Good morning.
Walaikum salam. Thank you, Habib. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I can take a selfie for you, bro.
Oh, okay. I want somebody. God bless you. Wish you good luck.
Joining me now to talk about that and much more is my weekly politics panel. Laura Tammen is a political science professor at Pace University, and joining us, as he does every Wednesday, is New York One political commentator Gerson Barrero. Thank you both for being here. And Professor, in all of the different metrics that you look at, the little data points, the little anecdotes, where do you put this kind of interaction on the street as something to indicate whether or not a candidate has strength?
I don't think it produces votes, but I do think that it reflects enthusiasm. You can tell when you're on the street with a candidate who's really gaining traction with the public. Mm-hmm. You can feel it.
Yeah.
I think it adds a dimension that we don't have. You don't have to be in a studio. You don't have to be in a debate format in a hall where it's so sanitized. Let's face it. It's television. We do that shit. It's out in the open. You don't know who's going to approach you. You can't stop them. I know you carry a big crew with you, but there's no security involved. So there's a real feel for who this person is. And they say hello to you, and it's because you come into their living room all the time or to their kitchen. So I think this is real. And people who complain, there's not a bias. I mean, Errol's been doing this for so long. Even when he was just writing, you always gave a fair shot. You're one of the people.
It's like, interesting. The same thing happened when I did the walk and talk with Andrew Cuomo.
Right.
Some people who confuse the kind of thing we were doing, which is really just kind of a profile and a conversation. Sure. And we had substantive discussions about policy if you wanted to sit and listen to us talk about property tax rates and the cost of insurance. But that's not really what it was for. It was really just to kind of, some people think that if you're not attacking the candidate that they hate, then you must be, in
with the other person
or something like that. I don't know. Anyhow, during that walk and talk, in fact, Zohran Mamdani talked about, he basically agreed with the head of the apartment association, which is the lobbying group for landlords, that making affordable apartments possible in the long term has to go beyond a temporary rent freeze and address the convoluted property tax system, the high cost of insurance. And, he also said, it was interesting, he wants to tax the rich, but he made a point of saying it's not important to tax the rich for its own sake. He just wants the money to implement certain programs. And I'm wondering if, is he moving towards the center, or maybe this is kind of where he was all along?
Well, I don't know what the professor's going to say, but I know that she's listened to the many lies that we've been told now, in my case, for decades, of hearing the rent is too damn high, or the fact that we're going to do something to control the price of rent, that we're going to do this, and the latest scheme is taking away the broker's fees and all that stuff. Let's do something real. And I'm hearing from Zohran something in terms of real thinking that it's not going to be upon him. He's going to depend on the legislature, the governor, who has our own spiel of lies. And they have been lies. Come on, Kathy, you've lied about this. And they can't control it. It has to be a collective of all the individuals that we've elected.
What I saw was a guy who's moving from 6-word slogans to the nuance of governing. Mm-hmm. You saw him really go in depth about the housing policy, and like you said, getting at the real problems and the real things that have to change in order for the picture to really change for New Yorkers.
No, I mean, there are a couple of housing policy nerds who probably were glad to hear that, just because it's the right question to ask, regardless of what you think of his answer. But what about the typical voter?
So I think voters were probably happy to see him talk about the substance of the issues because we've had so little of that from our current mayor and from his opposition. Andrew Cuomo isn't really diving into deeply to the issues either. And I think voters can sense that. Even if they can't follow every policy detail, they do have a sense when somebody knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, some of the numbers are really quite striking, you know, that when you add property taxes, which is about 30% of the cost of any rental apartment that has stabilized units, plus the highest insurance rates in the whole country, plus the basic operating costs, you know, the utilities and so forth, you very quickly get to something like $1,200 a month that, you know, per unit. Your rent's not going to be but so low at that point.
This isn't that landlords, and I'm not defending landlords or big building owners, but the fact is they have to make it operable so that they can actually rent the rent, but they have to make it so that you get the heat, the hot water, you know, that things are on time. You have the cleaning services. In most buildings, they get it. So they're not putting stuff into, it's going out. They have the interest. I didn't even know, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but I've asked people, you know, that these buildings, they get 5-year loans in which they have to then pay to be able to, so it's very complicated process, just like when you own your own home. I'm a homeowner, you're a homeowner. I don't know if you are or not, but an apartment, it's very complicated. You got to keep up with the rates. I leave it up to my wife. I don't know anything about numbers.
Well, yeah, by the way, there's a ticking time bomb out there. There's a bunch of these buildings that have, you know, 5 to 7 year loans that are all going to be coming due in the next few years.
Exactly.
That's another issue we're going to probably have to cover at some point. Let's take a short break. We've got more to talk about with this panel. We'll do that after this short break. Stay with us. Here's the deal. People need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 on Spectrum News New York 1. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
My name is Gail, and we are in my showroom for Florist Fire Design House. Getting Spectrum set up for my business was extremely smooth. They had it set up within an hour, and I was online and ready to go and run my business. Spectrum helps me stay online. You know, I have to be able to be online at 5 a.m. when the market's open. Without Spectrum, it wouldn't be possible.
Get up to 4 months free when you bundle award-winning internet. Visit spectrum.com/business to learn more.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day with in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One, weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where I'm once again joined by my politics panel, Professor Laura Tammen and Herson Barrero. I want to talk about this thing that happened yesterday. In an unusually personal social media message yesterday, Andrew Cuomo addressed Mamdani directly with lines like, quote, "You had failed at everything you've ever tried," and calling him, quote, "not a man at all, a weather vane spinning with the wind, a hypocritical chameleon desperate for attention and adulation." Does this reflect anything more than political frustration? I mean, I'm trying to think, What political purpose could that kind of an outburst serve?
It's Andrew being Andrew in a very public way on a social media that he doesn't understand, because he used to say that Twitter wasn't Twitter. He used to call it, before it turned to X, I still call it Twitter, that wasn't real, that it didn't represent real opinions. And now he's doing that. I started reading it, and I read almost everyone, including the criminal in chief when he puts out his stuff in the White House. And I just had to stop after the second. What is this attack? People aren't interested in your personal view. Again, this election is about the future of New York City. It isn't about what Andrew Cuomo thinks of the other person who kicked his rear political end. So he kicked your ass, so Andrew, live with it, and he's going to kick your ass again if you keep this kind of stupidity putting it out there.
Yeah, he sounds like a jilted high schooler who can't get the girl. He just sounds like he's venting.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking maybe he's trying to goad Mamdani into responding in kind, which of course would be a mistake. But you know, there's no other reason to get that personal. But I'm thinking, is there some group of voters out there that I don't know about or don't understand who would say, yeah, this is what I've been waiting for?
What kind of team does he have? We know he had the D team already that made him lose. I mean, part of it is his fault. Is he kept the same D team? I thought there was going to be a new team of advisors and people handling. You can't let a person like this, who is in a distant second place, do this kind of nonsense. This is me.
I mean, if you want to vent, you know, I don't know, vent in a speech when there's no cameras around or something, but not, you know, you put it, this is forever, right? You put this on Twitter, it's forever. Let's talk about our friend Curtis Sliwa. He dropped out of high school, but he is not dropping out of the race for mayor, and he had a warning today for people who keep asking him to step aside.
The billionaires are not going to pick the next mayor. The political elite are not going to pick the next mayor. The people of New York are. I trust the people. I don't trust the politicians, and I don't trust the billionaires. So let me put you all on blast. You call me, you try to bribe me. First of all, it's unethical, it's illegal. I will tape your conversations, I will report it to the proper authorities, and I hope you go to jail.
Well, I don't think he's going to get any more of those phone calls. I mean, that's for sure, right? These hypothetical phone calls. Hey, you think you might want a job doing something else? I wouldn't make that call.
Yeah, it's really telling about the moment that we're in, because all political actors are a product of their context. And, you know, he lives in New York City. He really cares about New York City. And when in a court of law, he tells the truth. And unfortunately, all of those things make him unique in this race.
Yeah, very, very.
Well, I think that Mamdani today made reference to that out of all the candidates, he's the one that he believes. And I think it's indicative of the fact that even though they're worlds apart, you couldn't be more apart with these two candidates. Never mind Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams. Curtis Sliwa and Zoran have nothing in common at all. But yet, I think that you notice through all the, you know, the shenanigans and the clowning around, and I personally believe, and I know for a fact, that those offers were made. I wouldn't call it a bribe because I don't know how far they went, but you can rest assured, you guys that are calling him, and I know some of the people that actually put in calls and made offers, which would have been tempting to anyone else, but this guy cannot be bought. This guy doesn't, you know, he has his macho thing, if you want to call it that, his personal reputation. He's had a life that's very public, and he doesn't hide. He can't be bought. He really can't.
And he's the same guy off camera as he is on camera.
Correct.
No, very true. And I'm glad he said it, because, you know, you lose sight of it. It is against the law to offer anything of value to somebody to drop out of a race, right? You can't do that, right?
In case anyone's wondering.
You can talk around it. You can suggest certain things. Hey, we'll certainly give you full consideration if you decide to do something else with your life or whatever. But anyway,
may I just add the fact that he is the legitimate Republican nominee. His party has to be respected. Who the hell is Andrew Cuomo? Who the hell is Eric Adams or anyone else, or even of these billionaires? He is the legit. We have a two-party system, whether you like it or not. Come on now, have some respect. There are Republicans, whether we like them or not, they have their candidate. He is their candidate.
One more item. In recent appearances, including on New York One, Mayor Eric Adams has been blaming the media for not informing the public of what a great job he does.
I've done amazing things in the city, and I want to share that with New Yorkers to push back on all of this negative energy around my campaign. Every day for the last 6 or 7 weeks, it has been reported Eric is leaving tomorrow, Eric is doing this, Eric is doing that. This is really undermining democracy. I'm not only running against Curtis, Zoran, and Andrew, I'm running against you guys. Y'all been my 6th candidate. Let me run for re-election without putting false rumors.
There are people close to the mayor who have been looking for other work for him, and they have told us that they are doing that, right? I mean, like, he is actually looking through intermediaries. He's looking for another job.
Professor, I'm just going to say something, and please forgive me, but how ungrateful are you? You pleaded as a senator. You spoke to this man. You spoke to me, other reporters, when you were at Borough Hall, when you wanted attention. You ungrateful piece of garbage. It annoys me because blaming the media, who is the media, you would be no one.
In the age of social media, I find it humorous that anyone would say they don't have the opportunity to explain themselves. And especially in a year when we've seen Zoran Mamdani talk directly to voters and get tremendous traction. Donald Trump, of course, was able to go directly to the people and appeal through Twitter early on. The mayor has these opportunities if he wants to take them.
Yeah. I mean, look, he started his own newsletter. He started a podcast. He goes on these entertainment shows. I mean,
he's not a credible person. He's not a credible person. The media doesn't have to do anything. The problem is they report what he actually does. He gets into trouble, but that's your doing. Nobody's making stuff up, Eric.
Yeah, that complaint sounded more like an alibi in some ways.
Yeah, to be able to justify his loss.
Well, thanks so much for coming by. Great talking with you, Professor. Good to see you, Herson. That is going to do it for tonight's show. Be sure to join us tomorrow, when my guests will include Congressman Pat Ryan. Until then, thanks for watching and have a great evening. We'll see you next time inside City Hall.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning.
You done with the sports section?
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
My name is Gail, and we are in my showroom for Florist Fire Design House. We are a full production wedding and event company that focuses on florals. Getting Spectrum set up for my business was extremely smooth. They were here the same day, had it set up within an hour, and I was online and ready to go and run my business. You know, I have to be able to be online at 5 a.m. when the market's open. And if I'm contacting a merchant via email or placing an order online, without Spectrum, it wouldn't be possible.
One more row.
Spectrum is reliable, they're committed, they're fast, and they really take care of me as a business owner. Last year, when the really bad hurricane came through, our internet stayed the entire time. One of the businesses down the street, she was like, wait a minute, how are you still online? And I was like, Spectrum, baby. You gotta get Spectrum.
Get award-winning internet for your business. Up to 4 months free when bundled. Visit spectrum.com/business to learn more.
This election year is all about New York City. There are 51 council seats up for grabs, races for our next city comptroller and the next public advocate.
Plus, an unprecedented race for mayor. That puts the power in your hands to decide